Adventuring life, hardtack and dirty water, weak beer, maybe a weak stew. Walking, so much walking. You had a horse, but it got eaten by an owl bear, hoofing it across the plains and forests, up mountains, into caves. Sore, sweaty bandits. Welcome back, adventurers. Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live as a D&D adventurer? You know, the day-to-day stuff that somehow gets glossed over between all the epic battles and dungeon delving. Well, come with me into another fantasy deep dive as we shed some light on the often overlooked mundane aspects of adventuring life. The truth is, we think about D&D adventuring, and, for most of us at least, we only consider what I like to call the highlight reel. Now, what's on this highlight reel, you might ask? Well, there's meeting your friends, of course, the party, as we refer to it, and then there's the fighting and the sneaking and the dungeon crawling. We think about the glory of those big moments, slaying the dragon and defeating the evil sorcerer and the metric shit tons of treasure and getting magic items. But let's be honest, that's only a tiny fraction of what being an adventurer actually looks like. In reality, most of your time is spent doing, well, boring stuff. But we don't include that in our games because we don't need to spend game time talking about the third time you've eaten or how often you go to the bathroom on the trail or any of that stuff. So what does the boring stuff really look like? Well, first there's your morning routine. You wake up, you're probably not sleeping in a cozy bed unless you're lucky enough to afford an inn. Most days it's a bedroll on the ground, or if you're fancy, in a tent, maybe a magic tent. And after a rough night on the hard, cold ground, you might get 8 hours of sleep, but don't be surprised if a random encounter or watch shift cuts that short. Then comes breakfast. If you're not rushing out of camp because something is chasing you, that is. Now, what's on the menu? Definitely not gourmet meals. It's usually some hardtack, jerky, maybe a handful of nuts or dried fruit if you're lucky. Hardtack, for those of you who don't know, it's like eating a rock. Hard, dry, and tasteless. You'll need rivers worth of water to wash it down, or you could just soak it in a sad excuse for a stew. Now, assuming you've eaten and you're ready for a full day of adventure, then you have to don your armor. Now, movies make it look really easy, but in reality, it's a whole process for heavy armor, like plate. You're taking at least 10 minutes to get everything strapped and secure, and you'll probably need a squire or a fellow party member to help you out. Imagine gearing up every time you hear a rustle in the bushes. It takes a bit of the glamour out of it, right? I mean, Well, for those of you in leather armor or chainmail, sure, it's faster. But let's not pretend those straps and buckles are all breeze, especially when you're half asleep or it's freezing outside, your fingers are numb. And the real kicker is that the armor isn't exactly comfortable and you've been wearing it all day, so you can expect a few bruises. Now let's talk travel. Adventurers walk a lot. There was a time when everybody bought a horse. Nobody buys horses anymore. Everybody walks. And you're covering miles every day. And unless you have a horse, which we just said nobody buys, you're doing it all on foot. There are no cars or convenient fast travel points here, and you're hoofing it across plains and forests, up mountains, and into caves. And by the end of the day, you're just sore and sweaty, and your feet feel like they've fought a battle of their own. And it's not exactly a pleasant stroll. There's the ever-present threat of bandits and wild animals, and of course, monsters. Every little twig snap or strange noise that you hear sends your party into alert mode. And I mean, who wouldn't be nervous about an owl bear ambush while you're just trying to eat lunch? And of course, we can't forget combat. Lots of combat in D&D. D&D makes it seem like you can just pop into battle at a moment's notice. But after a full day of travel, imagine fighting a group of bandits or monsters. Swinging a sword or casting spells takes energy, and after hours of marching, your arms and legs are screaming. Now, on top of that, add the weight of your armor, the exhaustion from travel, the packs and all the gear that you're carrying, the stress of always being on guard. And that's what fighting as an adventurer is really like. Then once the fight's over, if you're not dead, you're probably wounded. If you're lucky, your cleric friend can heal you up, but otherwise it's bandages, potions, and hoping nothing gets infected. Because wounds don't just magically heal, you'll be sore and limping for days. But you got your hit points back. And then finally, you make camp for the night. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. First, you have to find a safe spot. You have to gather wood, you have to set your tent or your bedroll, and let's not forget about cooking dinner, which is something that we also like to gloss over. Likely another side meal of hardtack, jerky, or whatever creature you've managed to catch that day. And of course, you can't just sleep through the night. You'll have to take turns keeping watch, making sure no enemies or wild animals sneak up on your camp. And if you're lucky, you'll get a few solid hours of sleep, but don't expect to wake up feeling refreshed. And you know how I mentioned that wounds don't magically heal? Remember that? Well, if you're lucky enough to be a D&D adventurer, actually, 8 hours of sleep is enough to cure anything, which is just absolutely weird. It's not all glory and treasure. There's a lot of discomfort, exhaustion, and dirty work involved in this whole adventuring gig. But you know what? You kids got this. Grab your swords and go into the dungeon. We'll talk to you later.